Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Backups.
What up, everybody? We are the Backups. I'm Timbo B. Davis, and I coach football, and he is
Connor B. Feckley, and I coach football.
And that's convenient. It continues to be. How's everybody doing out there? Hopefully you're doing well. We have a really cool episode tonight, and that is with Eric Pomerleau. And Pomerleau and I go way back. He's the defensive coordinator at Soldotna High School. We go way back. He actually was hired at Service High School, my alma mater that I stayed on and coached with. I believe I was 19 and the JV defensive coordinator, and Pomerleau was the head coach. So we go way back. But Connor, you met Pomerleau as well when you were playing with us at West.
I was going to say, yeah, actually as a player down at that Skyview camp, I believe it was going into my senior year when we went down there for the first time. But yeah, I got to know him as a player there firsthand, obviously working with Skyview as the head coach at that time. And yeah, it was real fun to get down there. Like you said, obviously being a little bit of a smaller school compared to being in Anchorage. But just love the culture he had kind of down there. With not the best athletes in the state, but they were out there working hard, and we had a great experience. And I think we ended up going back one or two more times after that. So I know guys always had good things to say about going down there and hanging out and being around that football program. And Coach Pomerleau.
It was a big part of our program for a few years. Skyview has since moved on and has merged with Soldotna High School, where Pomerleau is now as the defensive coordinator. So we're going to go ahead and run that interview with Eric Pomerleau, defensive coordinator at Soldotna High School. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Backups. I'm Timbo B. Davis, and I coach football, and he is
Connor B. Feckley, and I coach football.
And that's convenient because this is a football podcast. But joining us tonight is our friend Eric Pomerleau, who is the defensive coordinator at Soldotna High School, a team that is something like 1,001, I think is what their record is right now. So, Coach Pomerleau, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be here. I've, been coaching football for over 20 years now. Played it, all through high school, played it into college. Did my first real coaching thing while I was in college, finishing up my coaching degree, my college degree, and I was a C team assistant coach as my coaching practicum. Then I taught a year in Florida, and I showed up on campus, and I was the varsity DB coach. And you're down in the middle of Florida, and the athletes that you are facing was unbelievable. And some of the schemes we did were crazy, and what you'd see on TV, the other teams playing, was insane. We had a JV game, and you go there, and Deion Sanders' number is retired up in the stands. We went to another game, and after the game, Herman Edwards and Keyshawn Johnson are walking across the field because Herm's son was playing on the other team. I mean, it was a crazy experience. I was super young, thought I knew stuff and learned real quick that there's a lot more going on. Then I moved to Alaska. First coaching job was coaching up at Bartlett the year they went undefeated and won a state title. So that was a great experience going through that with John Jessen. And then I actually saw probably the best athlete to play football up here. Zach Bowman was on that team. So that was an amazing experience to see that. Then moved on to service, met Tim Davis. I got the head JV job, and Tim Davis at 19 years old was my assistant. And we'll probably get into that a little bit more. We've been together for a long, long time. And then coach service there, coached flag football with girls, which was awesome and great. Then I had an opportunity to move down to the peninsula. All my college football teammates, many of them were down here already coaching, and became a head coach down in this community. And then with the environment of Alaska and education everywhere, we had a combination of the schools. So the two rival schools in our area actually combined. And I became defensive coordinator at Soldotna High School. Work under one of my college teammates if you look on Max Preps, he's the winningest coach in the nation. And since I've been there, we've lost one game in 7 years. And that's another good story. We'll get into that, Mr. Davis. And then we've continued doing that. Right now we're working in the weight room and making sure grades are getting taken care of and always planning for what's going to come up. We have a tendency to do a lot of work from January to May, so things don't creep up on us in August. So
yeah,
nice. We share an office. It's almost a coach's meeting every single day. We work out together. That's a coach's meeting every day. So we're able to take care of a lot of business that isn't timed into business, or we have a whole bunch of stuff to do. It's just a constant communication back and forth, and it's never stressful or anything. And then everything just seems to get taken care of because we get to spend time together doing lots of different things. So that's where we're at right now.
Man, that's really cool. I think one of the coolest things about that is the idea of working, sharing a classroom or an office basically with your staff at the high school level. That's, around the nation that you'd like to see that, but, up here and other places, we're seeing not as many coach teachers in buildings. And so I think what Soldotna High School has is really special in that. I think that's I think that's, along with the kids and the amazing athletes, one of the secret sauce type things you got. So I want to pick your brain on that a little bit. So you played with Galen Brantley is the head coach down there. You played with him at Valley City State. Talk to us a little bit about those years at VCSU.
Well, he's 2 years younger than me, and he was a phenomenal all-conference player. I was not. I was like on kickoff and, getting thrown around. Wanted to be a great football player, but, mommy and daddy didn't give me quite enough to deal with. Coach Brantley is a 400-pound cleaner, and he's 6'3" and was an amazing player there. Then he graduated. I had some injuries, and then really turned to the coaching side when the body just didn't hold up anymore. And he was in North Dakota for like 4 years. I went to Florida. Then we've actually moved back to Alaska at the same time. I go to Anchorage, and he comes back home to Soldotna. And then we see each other and we're coaching opposite and different things like that. And now, we're practically hooked at the hip.
Awesome.
That is awesome. And I was going to ask, Coach, and it's funny because like the first time I got a chance to meet you and everything, and you were the head coach at Skyview there, like you mentioned there, and now, like you said, you've kind of had a chance to morph into one. Obviously, with you and Coach Brantley being so close, what was it like, kind of be like going against him, coaching against him, and then to kind of get a chance to hop into the same room with him, like you said, every day, and then create that relationship?
Well, going against him was always tough because they had a really established program. They've been a football school way before Galen. Before Galen was even playing, they were a football school. The other school came later. Had some amazing players, but guys, it comes down to coaching and establishing a tradition and setting a standard of excellence. And when I went down to Skyview, that's what we were working on. That's what I was trying to do because it hadn't been set there. Now, in other sports, Skyview was that. Okay? So it's not like one school is better than the other. It's just the people leading certain programs were developing them and becoming very successful. Just so happens Soldotna was a football school. Skyview was amazing at wrestling. If you go back and look at that, Neldon Gardner taking care of that. They were super good in track. So it was just trying to build that. And I see it's really, really hard when you're in a small community working hand in hand with each other, and one is the football power and one isn't. There's a lot of work that takes a long time and a lot of patience, and to see how that whole morphs into it. Fortunately, in our community, we merged, and now we're set in this phenomenal situation where things have worked out. Took a little time to get going, but now it doesn't even, it's 7 years now, maybe 8 years now. And it doesn't even seem like we've been apart,
Yeah.
It's just, we're just Soldotna. That's it.
What brought you up to Alaska in the first place?
Well, I had finished my year in Florida. Florida just wasn't for me. And when you're young and you have the ability to move a little bit like that. So then it was funny when I went to Valley City, there was hundreds of Alaskans. I mean, not hundreds, but there was at least 80 Alaskans, and I made friends with lots of them. And, you're kind of like, well, what should I do? Well, my buddy lives come live with us, come check it out and come do that. I was here for like not very long and, got introduced to some coaches. Hey, come do this. And then I'm fully involved and I'm 20 years in now. I did not come up here to hunt and fish and all that. That's not what I do. I'm in the gym. I coach football and, so I maximize what we can do in Alaska for football.
That's funny you said. So, and Connor and I are lifelong Alaskans. I've been here with the college here as well. And I don't think I've spent hardly any time hunting, as hunting season coincides mostly with football. And so it's cool to hear. And obviously we'll talk about that right now, but like to go back, we're coaches, and that's what we do as far as how we spend our time and our job up here. So a lot of people listening that aren't from Alaska, you think like, oh, Alaska. Well, yeah, but we're a lot like other coaches in the nation because we're trying to do our jobs right.
What best little Timmy 19-year-old Coach Davis story do you have you could share with us?
PG.
Well, we got a ton of Coach P and Coach Davis stories. I mean, we've been pals for a long time. Probably two simple things. The first time I met him, he was dressed like how Tim can dress, but then times that by like 30. This is who they're giving me.
As a 19-year-old too, that's hilarious.
As a 19-year-old, I mean, I know he can skateboard and make videos, but I got to run. I got 40 kids I got to run, and there's only 2 of us. Who is this? And then probably the funniest story for Tim, on the other hand, is, I'm going. I've done this. I'm going 100 miles an hour. I'm coaching through, and I'm pretty demanding and didn't probably sugarcoat it. I'm from Montana. They don't sugarcoat stuff. When Dad tells you to do something, there's no please in it. This is the job. We'll talk later. Get it done. And then we're going, and we're probably about 5 weeks in. And I'm like 6 or 7 years older than Tim. And I tell him how old I am. And he thinks I'm 42 and I was 25. And that's probably, those are probably the 2 best first year together stories we got.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I distinctly remember being shocked. It was younger than 35. It was hard for me to believe that one. I was like, what in the heck? And it was an awesome experience. It was we were very, very different. We still are very, very different human beings. But you can imagine 25-year-old you, fresh from Florida, right? You had just gotten here.
Well, no, I'd already been a year at Bartlett. So,
that's right. Yeah.
So 25 or 26. I'd already done the year at Bartlett, and now I was at service, and there we were.
And by the way, I had coached for 2 years prior to that. I was a pretty established D-line, C-team D-line coach. We named all I remember is we named all our stunts after 80s hair bands. And the kids that I still keep in contact with, some of them coach for us out west now.
Yeah.
They remind me of all the stunts that we named back then. It's pretty solid. You mentioned PE, and I love what you guys have done at SoHi, and anybody that's studied and watched Max Preps knows what SoHi has done nationally.
Right.
What is some of the secret sauce to the actual PE department from organization? Just what are some things that you can help? There's probably some young coach out there who's just got his job, maybe in a small town. Tell us from the PE side of things, what are the important things to do?
So here's how we've worked it and sold it and done it, and it's been very successful. And I'll go back on that. But at Soldotna, the number one thing that's made us successful is the weight room. But how we do the weight room is kids take a weight training class. Every kid does. That's part of the gig. Now, that has been morphed. I have a degree in exercise physiology. This is what I do. I've sent stuff to Mr. Davis and stuff. We have a phenomenal weight room, as good as many colleges, and we fill it up. Well, you got to remember that's only 50 football players, but we have 8 periods. So that's over 200 kids. Well, we get all the girls soccer players, all the girls basketball players, all the volleyball players, all the swimmers, all the stuff. In a small community like that, we need to share athletes. And I feel like I'm the strength coach for the entire school. When the girls basketball team loses, guess what? I lose, even though I may not even went to the game, but those are my kids. And so when we have them in a weight training class, go play basketball. We don't care. And then, in the fall, go do track, go do something. We're sharing athletes, we're developing athletes, we're having them compete on that. And we're taking care of making them better athletes for those other sports. So it's about getting everybody around that, because here's the biggest thing. And what I learned really quick when I came down here and was doing it at Skyview, and then I rotated over. If the football coach wants something in the weight room, the answer is no, because it's just for you. It's just for your kids. If your weight program is every athlete in the school, including the girls, you will get whatever you want. So if you're running that in PE, if you're the weight training PE person for everybody, you make it for everybody. And you push everybody. And you make it, it just comes for everybody. Because we wouldn't have 8 sections of weight training if it was just the football players. That's 2 sections. How do you fill 8? Well, you get everybody else that wants to do it. And we train them. They have a specialty course when they're freshmen that teaches them how to do what they're going to do in the weight room. And then when they get to the weight room, it's rocking and rolling. I'll have 5 or 6 football players in a class, and the other half will be girls and baseball players and basketball players and swimmers and skiers. And it's like practice.
What about, so one question I've always had, because I love that, by the way. I think that's awesome. I think it's inclusive. I think it builds school camaraderie. There is so much to be said about that model. Let's talk, not necessarily periodization, but working with kids throughout totally different seasons that they're in. How do you guys deal with that?
So here's the thing. And I'm just honest with this, okay? If you're in a tournament sport, no game matters until you get to regions. Okay? So if you win every game during the regular season but lose the first game at regions, was it a good season? No, it was a terrible season. So we're not going to change our training during the season. Lifting, go play your basketball game. Basketball games in a tournament. Wrestling, I have this big tournament. Is it regions or state? No. Then it's just practice. You're just practicing. Okay. So we're just working. Then when we get to regions, it's really, really simple. They'll work out normally on Monday because their body's used to that. You don't want to be 7 days off from your normal routine. We lighten it up on Tuesday. They do nothing on Wednesday, and then they're in there. And as we've gone, that taper right before regions to get going. Now, when they go to state, we'll probably take it back even one more day and go through that. But we don't do anything until it's regions or state, because those are the only ones that matter. So we're not going to waste training days during the season of any tournament sport until it's regions. And when it's regions, no, girl, go sit down. Go, today's your stretch day. This is your recovery day. And it's really, that's oversimplification, but all the feedback and stuff, it works really well. The kids feel phenomenal and all that. You don't want to take a whole week off, because you're going to take Saturday and Sunday off, and then you take all week off, and now you're ready to dig in on Friday. Well, you know what happens when you start working out after a 3-day weekend. Well, imagine when you take 7 off. Your body's in that routine. So we'll maximize the rest. We'll work through that. We work around injuries. Kids know that. What's the best that you can do today? We got there's a lot of practice, and I have a lot of experience, so it's super easy to do this. I know it's not. I've seen other people like, how do you do that? It's just practice, because I wouldn't, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have known what to do, but just over these years, we've done it. Some of the success we've had, like, wasn't last year because of COVID, but at the year before, every team sport made the state tournament at our school, besides baseball, which if pitcher gets hot, it doesn't matter what you do. But every single sport made the state tournament, and we're half the size of everybody else. I mean, that is an accomplishment of what everybody's doing and working through that, and they all kind of follow the same process, and this is what we do, and the success has come out. I've talked to when kids are in our class, there's just a level of fitness that they carry around with them year round. So when we go to track, we're probably on step 4 to start the season, instead of having to start at step 1. Now, with this COVID stuff, when we go into track, we're probably going to have to start at step 1.5, and we're going to be way behind what we've done in the past, because we don't have this standard of fitness that our kids just have walking the halls because they're in class every day. But so those are some of the things that we've done in the weight room, and just built in our little community, our little bubble.
What are some strategies you use going to other coaches? Because it's not just sharing athletes. You're a cohort. You're teaming together to help kids. What are some strategies you use? Because we all know that we're all coaches. We all have a little ego. We all have that little monster inside of us sometimes.
Right.
How do you approach other coaches when you're training the shared athletes?
Well, some of the stuff was, one, we're going to work together, especially like if they have summer tournaments and different things like that. They need to trust us that we're going to do what's best for them. When the kids know that you have their best interests in everything else, the coach kind of, can go along and stuff like that. So we're taking care of that. In our little community, it's really simple, and this doesn't get said very much, but you can go have your 3 stud players just play basketball, and then I'll have my 20 football players just play football, and I'll go 500 and you'll be 3-7 because all of your other players are just playing football. Let's not do that. Okay, let's not do that. I don't want to do that to you. You don't want to do that to me. I don't want to make kids have to choose. Okay. We've had a lot of very good football players where football wasn't number 1. We've had a lot of very good basketball players where basketball wasn't number 1. But you got to have this trust and togetherness in this, and you can go from there. What we have seen is we've had some basketball only kids. Then they finally take class like their junior year. And then all of a sudden they come out for football as a senior. Now, how we get them into games and how much we can use them is all that. And then, but then they're like, well, why didn't I do this the whole time? Because then they go into basketball and didn't do anything to hurt them or anything. It's just, it's a life experience. Where are we trying to go here?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going off the success of the weight room and obviously what Soldotna has been able to continuously put on, obviously throughout all sports, but we're talking football here. And it dates back to even when I played. Soldotna was running the show, kicking everyone's butt. So can you speak about some of the success over your years there at SoHi?
A weight roomed up athlete that's been trained to move. Okay, we don't train to bench 9,000 pounds. We train them to move. Is going to be a pretty successful athlete in Alaska. Okay, we're not playing against a whole bunch of Division I kids. So we take what they have, get them to be as strong as they can, as fast as they can. And when you work with normal people that take the weight room on, you're solid. You're a solid individual. Okay, you're a solid player, and we can find a way to use you and go from there. Then we get some of those kids that are a little bit above that, and then they go through that weight training stuff, and then they're pretty darn good. So we just have tried to eliminate. We want our worst player to be better than your worst player, or your worst three players. Okay. So if we have a weight roomed up kid that's worked really hard and is physically able to contribute, well, a lot of times we play teams that they might have 3 studs better than us, then 4 OKs, but then they're playing with 2 or 3 kids that just can't compete. And we find those players and then we go after it. I mean, that's kind of like I tell my kids, you need to work really hard because there are some very, very evil individuals called coaches of the opposite side. And they are going to try and mock you in front of your parents. If you can't tackle, they're going to make you tackle. If you can't block, they're going to make you block. You got to think what we try to do to other kids in front of their parents. I got tons of those. They're just motivation. That guy over there is trying to make you look bad in front of your mom and dad. You better be able to tackle because he's going to make you do it 18 times in a game if you show you can't. That's pretty good motivation for them.
There's some athletes there. There's some dudes,
right.
But you guys look like a bunch of normal kids, and then you put on the gear, and it was another level of football.
It was always a full team. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
The funny thing about that is some of the feedback, Galen and I are wired a little bit differently. We never really talk about winning. We're a big do your job, do it right, every single play. When we break down film, the correction comments on a 2-yard run, there's just as many on a 60-yard touchdown. We really don't work on results and all that. And sometimes that's hard on the kids. Talking to some of the kids later on, they actually they appreciate the loss. They appreciated what that felt like, and the learning that it gave to them. Because if some of these kids have gone, some of our kids went 4 years and never lost. And I try not to lose because I've lost a lot. I've lost plenty. I know what that feeling is. I don't want to do it anymore. Coach Brantley would go, yep, I've lost plenty. I don't want to do it anymore. And sometimes we don't understand that, there is some learning that happens in that. There's definitely a lot of learning that happens in the process to not have that happen.
Tell me about offensive football down there. You guys run the T. It's hand in hand with.
It's exactly what I was going to get into. So go ahead, finish what you're saying.
Well, I think so. It's the power T is coming from a guy that ran the spread and everything else like that is the power T is absolutely amazing because you line up the same way every time, and you no matter how you line up wrong. I mean, unless you are substantially better than us, Soldotna up front, and that's happened. The year that we had trouble with West, I mean, they were substantially better up front. They were loaded up front. But if we can match you up front, you can't line up right. I mean, however you line up, there's a play that's you're out leveraged, you're outmanned, and makes it very simple for the coach because you're not formationing people. Oh, where are they lined up? Okay, we run this, and it's amazing. There's a lot of small details to it, and Galen's a genius when it comes to stuff like that. If we're going to talk X's and O's, like in our program, I think your offense and defense need to fit each other. We're extremely aggressive on offense. We, even though we're double tight, 3 backs, I mean, we score 50, 60 points. That puts a lot of pressure on the other team to score points. And then defensively, my philosophy is we kind of bend but don't break. When I go into a game, there's a couple things that I look for. I go, 1, can you physically beat us? Well, if you can't physically beat us, then I'm just going to line up and then, sooner or later, the ball goes back to Galen, touchdown. Ball goes back to Galen, touchdown. And, momentum's shifted and all that. Now, can you physically beat us? Now, can you out-execution us? And that's the next thing, okay? Now, if you can execute, now I need to teach my guys, this is where they go, this is how they do stuff, and all that. Now, if you can physically beat us and you can out-execute us, now I start having to go into my playbook. I want them to know what I know and line up in our base, and you have to physically beat us, and we've been in the weight room, and we should be tough. And then you have to out-execute us. Well, we've been practicing. I've told you everything where we need to go. And we give up more yards on the first drive than we usually do in the rest of the game because it takes a little while for kids to settle in and do all that. I remember a couple years ago we played West, and you guys went like on a 10, 13 play drive, and I think you might have got a field goal. You might even score on the first thing. But now our kids figure that out. But then we run trap, and it's a touchdown in 4 seconds, and now try and keep up. We're also super good on special teams. We spend a ton of time on them. So and Galen's going to go forward on 4th down. So your offense and defense have to match. If Galen's super aggressive on offense and I'm blitzing all over the place, when you blitz, you give up big touchdowns. Okay, I'm going to make the other team physically beat us, and I'm going to make the other team out-execute us. And if you can do that for 4 quarters, and then you also have to stop him on the other side, which when we average 50 to 60 points a game is really tough. It just kind of manifests itself to work out well. I think Coach Davis said that. He told me one time when we were talking, he goes, Soldotna is a Tuesday defense. If you don't have it figured out on Tuesday, you're in big trouble because it ain't changing by Saturday or anything. You're not getting anything new. If we can't execute and beat it on Tuesday, we're in trouble. Is it something like that? Is that what you said, Tim?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I kind of lump a few of those offenses like the wing T. And if the wing T is coached well and has dudes behind it, I think it's just one of the most devastating offenses there are. Obviously, we've banged our heads against Bartlett and you guys, and it's one of those deals where you need mastery to beat it. And that year our linebackers were pretty good. Yeah, you guys did turn the ball over a bunch, but our linebackers are pretty good. And I think when I think about that, but think about the other years that again, you guys beat us way more than we beat you. Those years were years where you could see gears burning in linebackers and the interior linemen. You see the gears turning on Wednesday, Thursday, and now you're like, ooh, this is going to be trouble. So I think you're right. I think it's one of those things. We did all sorts of stuff too, and we still utilize a lot of it, like the virtual reality stuff. We had our linebacker sitting there. We did a VR program of, and we do this with wing T or many of the gap scheme offenses. It's you can watch film forever until you are a Mike linebacker standing there and you feel trap happening. You feel power. You feel the outside run, whatever form of it is in that offense, in which offense you're talking. Man, I'll tell you what, like you said, it's something you better have known by Tuesday so you can master on Thursday.
Well, and the other thing about our offense and sometimes the wing T is, especially when we only see a team one time, so in the past when Kodiak was a little better and when Kenai was a little better, they would give us tougher games defensively. And the reason why is the coaches could go to the kid and go, if you don't do this, this will happen. You have to do this every single play, every single play, every single play. And because they got their butt kicked the year before, the kid is like, oh, yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
We can play a team that's never played us, and no matter how many times the coaches, until you feel it, they don't believe it. And then they start running around trying to find the ball, and here we go. So I mean, we've gone out of state and played in California. We played in Oregon. They've never seen us before. I can see the coach teach him well, and he'll do his job for one play and two plays. And coach, I'm a football player. I got to find the ball. And as soon as you start looking for the ball instead of doing your job, it becomes very, very difficult.
Yeah. So the flip side to this too, then, is that there's a small school. You only have so many athletes. In fact, losing a guy for you basically lose two because you lose an offensive and defensive starter. Yes. What then, as the defensive coordinator with this amazing offense, we know how it looks different than anything else, like you just mentioned. So it's almost impossible to simulate in practice. As a defensive coordinator, using these same athletes, what is going through your mind to be a complementary defense to the T?
Well, I have to be, because the head coach spends more time on offense. It goes first. He gets to use more time. I mean, he's the boss, so I know I gotta fit into what he's got. I mean, if you got an offensive coordinator, if your offensive coordinator is the head coach, you know that you better be a compliment, because he's taking the time. He's taking your time from you. So
what do you do? How do you build? Because you guys have been very successful on defense.
Well, the first thing I did and got done was I made Coach Brantley coach defense. So now he's got a position group. So now defense becomes just as important. When he was just doing offense, well, if you're coaching the defense as well, that's your position group. You got a little bit of pride there. Now that's important. So he's become phenomenal linebacker coach at that. And then it's kind of balanced out. And we just stay on the clock. When we got together, it was really kind of a sit down session, and we've been doing it a long time, and we were both really burned out. And now that we're together and we see the same things and we work on that, we kind of split up the duties. That this is easy. I can do this for a long time now. I'm not in it alone, and sometimes I just feel that way. So complimentary is, I'm going to make you block and execute your offense, and know that I've spent 200 hours on film, and my kids have spent 80 hours on film, and I know your tendencies and everything else, and our kids do. If you've ever seen our kids, like, you line up in a formation, you only run, they'll call out your plays. And so then that's complimentary. We always play 3 levels. I blitz very rarely. So you're going to have to execute. Drop a pass and get into 2nd and 10. That's going to be tough for you. I'm going to drop 7 and you're going to have to execute. As long as we tackle well and don't give up big plays, it's hard for high school kids to execute for 10, 12 plays. So
what do you do tackling? What sets you guys apart? What are I know you're a system team.
I wouldn't say that we're phenomenal tacklers, or we have the secret sauce or anything, because we've been searching for tackling circuits, progressions, and we've kind of changed. We got the rings, and one of the reasons why we got the rings is we played South with that phenomenal team, and we beat them pretty good, but we didn't break a tackle. I mean, with maybe arguably the best team Alaska's ever seen, we didn't break a tackle. So we're beating you, but we're having to execute because our athletes are not breaking tackles. So we started doing the tackling rings. We went to a conference, and they had a real tackling circuit. There's a company out there that just does tackling, that will break down your film and tell you these are the tackles you're not very good at. You need to do these drills this week, and Johnny needs to do this drill, and his tackling and all that. And so we've taken some of that information, and they've really expanded on the hawk tackle and really took the science to the next level. So we've applied that, and then some position specific. Too many times we get into tackling circuits, and we make D linemen do something they're never going to do in a game, and we make DBs do something they're never going to do in a game, and just always trying to maximize our time and making sure the kids are getting what they want. And probably one of the things that's way different at our school is the defensive coordinator teaches the D-line. I don't see that a lot in a lot of places. I guess the only other place I've really seen that in Alaska is Eielson, and they were winning a ton of games. Because if you really control the front, and teach D-line like the scheme of a defensive coordinator would do it, it's really hard to move the ball. So that's probably one of the other things that we do as well.
That's a great, dude. I love that, because we just have done a few episodes now. We have where we're talking bigs up front. And I'm a big believer that if you're going to be an offensive coordinator, if you haven't coached O-line, you need to make it your mission to be a O-line guru for a year or two and study and know everything you can. I think that is the first place any coordinator should start. And that's a real interesting point you make, because I don't know if that's necessarily the mindset on the flip side. I think a lot of defensive coordinators they want to dial up their best Saban looks. And
and some of that is just personality stuff. It's kind of crazy. I'm a big dude now, but I was a skilled kid growing up, So, and I was a DB coach in Florida. So I understand the back end. What happens sometimes, when you're getting your defensive coordinator, well, if you were a D lineman and you've only coached D line, you don't know what in the world they're doing in the back end, and, so, or you're the DB coach, you don't know what they're doing up front. And so you got to know how to do that. And Coach Brantley and I talk about this all the time with offensive coordinator. I mean, I see it in college football, and they'll run plays and look at things, and I'll be like, that guy doesn't know anything about O-line play. He's calling plays. I get it. He's with the quarterback all day. He has no idea what they're doing up front. He doesn't understand that. The O-line play is not matching the play calling. And so if you don't understand what's happening up front, on either side of the ball, it doesn't really work that well.
Coach, I love it. We're butting up on an hour here, so I want to get any thoughts that we missed, something that what's going to help the it could be football thoughts, life thoughts, anything. We're open as far as what we address here on the show.
Well, I think any program, if you want to be successful, and the two most important things at Soldotna High School football is one is grades. We really get after grades. We don't lose kids in eligibility. If you have everybody, you got a place to start. And then the next thing is the weight room. You got to put you're going to have to play against grown men. You got to have grown men out there. And that doesn't mean you have to be 280. But I mean, that means you better have a grown man out there because you're going to ask them to block grown men. And so if anybody ever asks where our program starts, one, it's in the classroom because we got to have everybody. And as a coach and a mentor, we got to get them to graduate. I mean, we're here for so many other things, and so many of them just don't have good habits with that. And if we can just get them to their junior year and they start maturing and becoming men, then that works their way out. But we have to work so hard on that. We work out every day after school, and guess what? We have 5 or 6 kids in there. Okay, you're missing this, you're missing that. We got to work through that. And it's, and I really take pride in that. Having every kid eligible is the big thing. And then you got to physically get them ready to play. And then it's up to you. And then after that, you got to teach them football. And that's each individual thing. There's 100 ways to do it. But if you can get them, every kid in your school eligible and able to play, and then you weight room them up, now it's on you, coach. You got to get that done. So that's where I would say the big things where we start. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, but really the number one thing for us is classroom. We don't lose kids to ineligibility. We stay on them. I'm not going to say never, but that it's very, very, very rare. And we really work hard on that. And that can be frustrating. We coach all year long. That's the number one thing. Then weight room them up and make them great athletes. And then coaches. Then after that, now it's time to do football. But those are the things we start with where we're at right now.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Connor, what were there was a lot there. Ton there. He was all over the place, and it was awesome. It was good that he was, because he brought a lot of good stuff. And what's the takeaway you have from the interview today?
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways I had from that interview with Coach Pomerleau was just the weight room stuff he talked about. I mean, the alignment of how the weight room was not just for the football program, but throughout the entire school. I mean, how all the athletes, whether they're in a sport or not, just how they keep that alignment, as a solid focus point, throughout all their athletics. It's almost like an academic structure point to their school system. And obviously it's paid off as a player, as a coach coming back, being around the state, being involved with high school football for, just knowing more about it the last 10, 15 years. I mean, they've always been consistently solid, and the weight room is definitely a key component of that. So they definitely got a good thing going, and they're doing things the right way down there in Soldotna.
And it pays off. They're like we joked about it. They're 1,001 or whatever. They've won a bunch of games.
No
it's really cool. One of the things that I pick up on is Pomerleau in particular has a really good man. What a wide range of experiences he's had as a coach. He played ball, and then he talks about coaching DBs in Florida. He comes up here. Service did not win a lot when he was here. We had to go through the split of the high schools that basically made Service and South JV schools. If you go take a pretty good varsity program, you split it in half, that good varsity program suddenly isn't that good anymore. And
that's tough, yeah.
And so he's gone through those experiences of winning and losing. He coached girls flag football. So he was one of the first, actually, maybe the first girls flag football coach at Service High School. And so he was like a pioneer, you could say, for something that's really big in our community right now. Was a head coach. So he brings a lot of wisdom and a wide range of knowledge, which was cool to hear and cool to sit down with my old buddy. So
like I said, it's kind of fun because in Alaska we kind of get that diversity of cultures, of ways of life, of everything. And so he's kind of got that perspective through coaching football. Like you said, you get a chance to coach all over the country, boys and girls, different levels. So just cool to hear his perspective on what it's like coaching football and somewhere else in Alaska.
Hey, we're real thankful to Coach Eric Pomerleau, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from him and his Soldotna stars sooner than later. So everybody else have a wonderful night, and we will catch you next time. We are the back. Stewards.